When you invest as an investor, of course, we already know you're buying an interest in several life settlement policies. A portion of your principal is set aside into a reserve account. We call that the reserve funds, okay? What happens when a policy was scheduled to use funds over the course of 6 or 8 years, and the policy matures, like in this case, in 4 years, or that case a couple years ago matured in just 2 years? There was reserve funds there for 6. So what happens to the balance? Of course, that stays in there to service the other policies. If there are reserve funds remaining after all of the payouts have occurred, you take that remaining reserve funds over and above your death benefit ownership.
Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Ben Mohr, on the show called Truly Diversified, where we look at alternative investments, how people are making money outside the market, and also not shoving money into snugly safe products like annuities and CDs, which at the end of the day leave people not very happy about the returns they get. You may recognize, somebody here that we've had a guest a few times, Barry Neal. He runs a life settlement investment company out of California called Equilife LLC. You can find information on them, and we'll give you the information again here. It's Equilife, EQUILIFE, LLC.com. What his company does, if you haven't seen this before on past shows, is they go out and they buy out existing permanent life insurance policies, usually on people around 75 to 85 years old, bundle them into one portfolio at a time, and then investors like yourself can come in with either IRA money or cash and buy segments of each of those policies and then spread out your money on all of them. When the person passes away, then you get your money. And so we thought this would be a great time. Here we are at the end of the year, and just show you kind of proof of concept. I mean, here we are talking about this all the time on the show, and people are probably thinking, does it really happen? Does it really work? Well, you're sitting here looking at the CEO of a company that's been doing this nearly a decade. And so we thought we'd take a snapshot of this year, a very common year for what he does. It's not been an amazing year. It hasn't been a bad year. This is a very basic year for what they do and show you proof of concept. So Barry, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. By the way, congratulations. Barry just had his second baby. Well, anyone says that, you didn't have anything. Your wife had it.
I did my part 9 months ago. That's all.
Yes. So if he looks a little tired, this is guys, but I've been asking him the last couple of days to come on here, but he's been a little busy. So I think you look pretty good for a guy who probably has gotten a few hours of sleep over the last week. But congratulations on that.
Well, I've had help. Thanks so much, Ben, for having me back in the limelight. Have been busy, but I learned about this latest policy maturity on the day my son was born. That's some good news, extra good news.
That's a special one. Yeah. And I haven't even gotten into that. Yes, you just got word. I mean, that's when I kind of sent out congratulations to you. You told me when your son was born, but also you're like, hey, I've even got great news on both sides, business and family. I've added an addition to the family, but also we have a new maturity.
Yeah, like he started to explain, I mean, we have had now a few maturities this year, another one pending, and it's not all, rosy, but it's not all bad. So this is really going to, I think, flesh out a picture for people about what it looks like when it kind of underperforms, what it looks like when it overperforms, and some in between.
Well, the way I say to people when I talk about business is everybody wants to show you their LeBron James numbers, right? They all want to show you their Tom Brady numbers. Who doesn't? But and they're legally can say that's what happened because they have that, right? And that's what I say is results may vary, right? And you have numbers like that, but you and I have known you a long time, and we're all about transparency and honesty. And what's funny is a lot of people just want to bring in money and promise people the world, and then they don't care. But you're just essentially mortgaging your future, 3, 5, 6 years down the line. So that's where you and I like to give people realistic numbers on something like this, because the issue is, yeah, you have home runs here, right? But you're also going to have some real basic vanilla. So let's delve into the overalls. How many policies have matured? And you can have one. Let's just say that's going to mature. So because it has matured and the payout will come in, let's say the next 30, 60 days. So let's just call it 2025 numbers. how many maturities have you had this year, and how much money total is that for investors?
Yeah, sure. So that pending payout is all but inevitable. The insured has passed, so it's now a matter of collecting the death benefit claim and paying that out. Okay, so with that one and the three that have paid out over the previous months of 2025, we will now have paid out more than $5 million this year. The one that's pending, of course, went a little long relative to the estimates, okay, because we're talking about insured passing away, collecting the death benefit claim. You already know your death benefit ownership amount on day one, but you don't know exactly when you're going to collect it. I mean, sure, we have estimates, but nobody has a crystal ball, and this is real life, and people are going to pass when they're going to pass. And in this case, policy went a bit long, so it's kind of balancing out maybe we do have some Tom Brady numbers. I would call it even
we'll get there. Yeah, we'll go through one by one. But on this one, you're saying, this is kind of here's what happens, because, I do dinner seminars all the time, and I just did a podcast and I shared the story with you. And a guy literally raised his hand and said, well, what if everybody here, lives to 150? And I'm like, oh, okay, right? I talk about, you and I use the terms all the time, probability versus possibility, right? And it's like, is that possible? Anything in the world is possible, even if we've always known, think about it. Asteroids have near misses with the world all the time. And scientists can all day say it's not going to hit the Earth. Well, yes, that's probable, but it's also possible that anything could happen, right? So yes, all 5 people that somebody bought, who are all basically, by the way, unhealthy for their age group, could live twice as long as they are. You and I both know the chance of that happen is ridiculously remote beyond anything you should ever worry about, but you have to entertain that as a possibility. So with that said, more likely what's going to happen if they go long is exactly this policy. Do you know roughly, and you may not have what was the life expectancy on this person roughly?
Yeah, so the third-party life expectancy we obtained on this policy was about 3 years. He was an 86-year-old male, like you say, and worse than average health. His life expectancy was only 3 years. Okay, but he ended up living, it's now more than 6 years before he passed. So 92, yeah.
Yeah, 92, 93. He was 86 years old, and here's the bottom line, right? So I'm not saying this is a worst case scenario, but this is what people are talking about when they come to the dinners of like, oh my God, what if somebody lives twice as long, right? Twice as long here, twice as long. And they live twice as long on this policy. And you just told me, depending on when the payout comes in the next few weeks or a month or so, probably somewhere in the range of about a 5 to 7% compounded return. Right?
Yeah, that's right. We're still looking at, I think, more than 5%. Of course, things could be delayed, but based on my experience and how these things go, we're still looking at better than 5% on this.
5 to 7%. So you're already there. This is a, oh my God, the person lived twice as long scenario that people are really worrying about. And you still saw a 5 to 7% return somewhere in there. Compounded, folks, don't get fooled by the guys who sell you simple. What we'd be talking about in simple interest would be about an 8 to 10%. This is the real world compounded, right? And 5 to 7% is still better than any safe money out there, right? Number one. So if you had money in an annuity during that stretch of 6 years, Barry on this policy that went twice as long still outproduced that, right? Still outproduced an annuity. And then if you take it like basic stocks, you're just slightly below on your case that you're showing that in this year was the worst producing case you had this year as far as maturity.
Yeah, it sure was. And, if you want to look at it in terms of simple interest, that works for us too. You made your 35% gain on this policy. Not bad. It didn't take 35 months. It took, maybe 76 months. Was what we're estimating, but shoot, nobody just gives you a 35% gain.
Well, now here's the thing. And so we've kind of given you, everybody, folks at home, the story that we get from it. Well, what if someone lives longer and longevity is the risk? We just showed you on a case like this, and it's pretty standard, that somebody probably lives twice as long as expected. You still got your money in a fairly decent time frame. It wasn't 3, it was 6. So remember, a lot of our clients here are using IRA money. I'm going to tell you right now, if I'm sitting in front of a 63-year-old who plans on working and not taking retirement for 10 years, as far as that actual money, he does not give a darn about access to that money. right? It's not like he comes to you 3 years later and goes, oh my God, I need the money on this to go put the roof on my house, or we're not going to live because we don't have income. No, that's not true. That's why a lot of people use IRA money. And he just got his money. It just took 3 years longer. Now, let's look. So folks at home, we played your negative side. Everybody loves the glass is half empty. Okay, but here's Barry's company, and I hope you love the transparency here, because we just went with you're giving us that bad scenario. Well, now you got to give Barry the good scenario. That's one case he had mature. Okay. He had 4 this year. Let's walk through those policies. You had one at the very beginning of the year. Tell me, what was the APR on that?
Yeah, about 13%.
Okay.
So
13%, which tells you that policy matured right in the ballpark of probably a little early, maybe 6 months to a year early, right?
Yeah, that's right. The life expectancy on that one was about 8 years. It matured in about 6. Okay, so about 13%.
So almost 2 years early. So you can see here, now let's take the dichotomy here of you have over here 3-year life expectancy happened in 6, 3 years beyond, still going to make about 5 or 7%, right? Now you have one case over here that happened, let's say 2 years early. See the balance, right? Okay, so a little 2 years early, 3 years back. And so if you only had those 2 cases, you could look at it just in simple math, okay? That would be a blended rate of about 18%. So look at what you're getting on those 2 cases. If you just had those 2 cases in a vacuum, and it doesn't really work that way, but you would still be looking at about a 9% return, and blended, your money think about this, folks, blended would come in on time. Isn't that right? Because you're getting some money early, some late. So that now let's look at that 60-year-old guy who gave us IRA money. And let's say he only had those 2 cases, right? Is that he can't complain about it coming 3 years later on his IRA, which he isn't, because he doesn't need the money, because he just got another one this year that would have been 2 years ahead of time. Okay, so there we have that case, folks, and you see the 2 blended, one 5.7, the other one making 5 to 7. You have another one making around 12, 13%. Blended, that would be about 9 if they did that. Okay, now you have another case that came due shortly after that one. What was the APR on that?
Yeah, about 10. And what's interesting on this one, passed away right about on life expectancy. So now we have all different scenarios, don't we?
What was that? What would give it? Do you have the numbers on that?
So the original life expectancy on this policy, similar to the one we talked about earlier, also a 35 months life expectancy. But this one, investors were paid out in 38 months. So about 10%.
Right. So just 3 months beyond. So let's expand this out more. And it might sound like I'm being redundant, but I'm making my point to those naysayers. Now you're sitting in 3 policies and you go, okay, I made one that came 2 years early. I got one that literally hit it on the mark, and I came with one that was 3 years late. You blend those all together. You have a 12 to 13, let's call it 13%. You have, let's say, a 6% over here. That's 19% total. And then you add a 10% in. That's 29 to 28% total on 3 policies. You split that up, you're almost making 10% compounded, which, by the way, now we're getting into stock-like returns. We're getting into S and P-like returns. Why do I bring that up? I bring that up because I'm not saying that if you invest with Barry, you're going to make stock market-like returns. I can show you that with these people, they most likely did make stock market-like returns out of those 3 cases. So you can buy into life settlements and have some type of expectation of making what we like to call healthy or competitive returns without being in the market. That's the whole point of this, is why wouldn't you want to make decent returns without taking the risk of the market? Well, by the way, probably 80% of your portfolio is still going to be in the market. With the people we deal with all the time, like somebody's got $1 million in their IRA, they might give us 50 or 100,000. So if the market does what we want them to do well in the market, right? We want that to happen. At the same time, what we're saying is take a little bit of what you do and place it over here with us so that can happen. Stop gambling your retirement future on the stock market. I've helped many investors just like you make millions of dollars with double-digit returns without placing one single penny in the stock market. Look, this is a proven strategy that ultra-wealthy, savvy investors like Warren Buffett have used for decades to hedge against stock market risk. So if you're interested in learning how to make competitive returns without stock market risk in an investment that is not affected by politics, worldwide events, or economic woes, all you have to do is simply click on this link below to learn more. Okay, now let's talk about your home run. Now we get to talk about the home run, right? So we're going to talk about the home run. And I've talked about this case a little bit before. You guys paid out in mid-October. Give us some scenario on that.
Yes, this is about a month ago. You know, call it what you will. I'm more Michael Jordan. I mean, he had 6 rings.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. So I'm that era too.
It's the Michael Jordan policy. Okay, so we love to talk about it. It did pay out about a month ago. Life expectancy on this one, 108 months. Actually paid out in about 50 months. So in
less than half the time. Right. Yes. So now we expanded out with the 4 cases, and that APR was about 20% per year.
Right. Yeah, APR 20% APR.
Twice as much. Yeah, twice as much of how the market is doing. 5 times the amount you would get in any kind of CD and probably an annuity in this era. So then when you blend it out with these 4, we just said on the other 3, and I know I'm not doing this perfect, it doesn't exactly work this way, but we're just going to take this in a vacuum. If you had 28 to 29% total returns on those other 3 divided by 3 basic math, and now you throw in 20%, right? You're now making about 48 to 50% total divided by 4. And now you're up in the 12s and the 13s compounded. And that, if you compare it to most basic stock market type stuff right now, is outpacing it. So that's what we wanted to look at. Here's another thing, Barry, talk about that. That policy is not only a home run. So what that was is people were bought into that group. So let's back up. You had an offering back in 2021. You said, here's the offer. You got about 40, 50 people to buy out all the positions. Okay, somewhere in there. Some people had 25,000. Some people, there was a guy in there that had, hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So it's a variance of how much they put in. You could have people as low as total in the overall round of 5 policies might have 25 grand. You might have somebody in there that literally had $250,000. Okay, that's very standard. So I'm guessing, I don't need the exact number, but it could be anywhere between 40, 50 people own these policies. In 2023, in this round, you had another payout, okay? And the APR was what on that?
Yes. So on this new payout, we're looking at 20% APR. So you're right, we did have a payout already on this set of policies for this set of investors, about 53 investors, okay? So the first policy that paid out, and remember this big one's the second of 5, the first one to pay out about 2 years prior, October 23, or actually August 23, did a better than 30% APR. It looks like it was about a 33% APR. Yeah, so, just to expound on this set of policies for a bit, I mean, investors should be very happy. If they're not happy with these kinds of returns, they're not going to be happy with life settlements. I'll tell you why.
They're just not going to be like, they're not happy in general in life, Barry. It's not that.
They can't be happy, okay?
Yeah. No, yes.
Yes. So the first policy to pay out was about 20% of the overall death benefit, okay? What that means is it's 33% of the principal, okay? Here's an example. You put in $100,000. That first policy paid you back $33,000 in about 2 years. Okay, already looking good. But now what we didn't expect, but as you know, Ben, I mean, this does happen, just like policies can go beyond the life expectancies, they can come in early. It's happened many times. This policy now to pays out 94% of the client's total original principal. Okay, so you were paid out already 33. Now you're being paid. Now you were paid out another 94%. So that's 127% of your original principal You're already in the black. How beautiful is that? And you still have three more payouts coming. So even if those three more payouts, we know that these policies pay out. It's unbelievable that they wouldn't. However, for sake of argument, let's pretend that they don't pay out. Okay, you're still already doing a 6.25% annualized return, right? You're already kind of getting
well. Yeah, but you're talking worst case scenario, and I don't want people.
But that's the floor. I mean, now you have three more payouts coming. I mean, we should look. Let's make some assumptions. We could say the remaining three insureds go long. I like to crunch the numbers for people. They like it. I mean, if it's good, push it, lean into a good thing. Now, let's say the three remaining policies go about 2 years beyond their original life expectancy. So all three of the remaining ones go a couple years long. Investors are still going to be doing close to a 14% APR.
Yeah, APR. That's crazy. So even folks, for you at home to understand kind of the inside baseball, again, to repeat what Barry's saying, just on a simple angle, is these people bought into 5 policies back in 2021. In 2023, they got paid out on a policy. They made 33%. Now, 2 years later, they're paid on another policy. They made 20% APR. That means there's 3 existing policies left, right? So now you look at the remaining policies. They've already, whatever people put into these investments, they've already made back, right? So they can't even sit here and be like, I'm going to lose money, right? And these policies, they can't lose money. It's now about how much they gain. So Barry's coming from the angle of the what if on the bad side. If these people, all 3 of these, live 2 years beyond life expectancy on these cases, which they're not even near there right now, if they did, the clients would still walk away with a 14% APR, better than stock-like returns. And he's giving you the benefit of the doubt of like, if they went and lived this long. If they go ahead and if they pass away right when expected, which is what we would expect, you're probably looking at an APR of about 18 would be my guess, somewhere in that ballpark. Am I right?
Yeah, it's better than 15 for sure.
Yeah, so, 16 to 18%, right? Which would be double what the S&P has been doing recently and would be 4 times the amount you're going to get in some safe money product. And these are real numbers in real time that we can show you. We have transparency. We've got the checks. We've got clients that have been paid. There's no doubt about it. Before we go, I want to talk a little also insight on that one round, this round that we're talking about in October, where your investors got a $3 million payout. They made 20% APR. They got a payout 2 years ago, 33% APR. Remember, they have 3 remaining policies. Now, the bad news on life settlements, and I don't want to get into this too much, is that yes, if all these policies went long, we're talking like if you had 5 and you never got paid early, you could get a premium call down the road. And I don't want to get too much into that, but yeah, it's a few $100. It can be a few $100. It could be $1,000 down the road. Okay. In this case, it's highly, highly unlikely that you're probably going to have a premium call, and explain why that is. Because what happens is every single policy has a premium reserve. So as Barry just explained, he had 2 policies that came way early, meaning there's remaining policy money there sitting in policies that don't exist anymore. Now, I know for a fact, other companies I've worked with in the past, the company, because it's not statistically or contractually said that it goes anywhere, they will pocket that money and contractually have the right to do so. When Barry established this company, that was a place he drew a line in the sand saying, long term, that does not benefit us because you don't want premium calls. So explain to people at home what you do with that money and how that benefits the client in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think you summed it up pretty well, but just to review, when you invest as an investor, of course, we already know you're buying an interest in several life settlement policies. A portion of your principal is set aside into a reserve account. We call that the reserve funds, okay? What happens when a policy was scheduled to use funds over the course of 6 or 8 years, and the policy matures, like in this case, in 4 years, or that case a couple of years ago matured in just 2 years? There was reserve funds there for 6. So what happens to the balance? Of course, that stays in there to service the other policies. If there are reserve funds remaining after all of the payouts have occurred, you take that remaining reserve funds over and above your death benefit ownership. Okay. So your death benefit ownership is an estimate of your return. You can actually earn more than that if there are reserve funds remaining. To your point, Ben, of course, if the reserve funds are depleted, you have to pay in more. It could be less. On this case, it's going to be more in all likelihood. And from that first policy that paid out and the one currently, so there's about 25% of the total reserve funds allocated did not end up even being used for the policy. Okay, so we're way ahead of schedule on the reserves, and that could definitely bump up your annualized return at the end of the day. It likely will in this case, and probably by a few percentage points.
Right, that's the difference. So this is our home run that we talked about. When you get early maturities, what happens, not only do you see amazing APRs like 35% or 33% APR and then a 20% APR. And by the way, you've now been paid back more money than you ever invested. So you can be satisfied there. Now all of your massive gains are going to come from these next three. Is not only are you probably going to see some really nice double-digit returns overall. I mean, pretty much. We expect that. Doesn't mean, we can't guarantee it. But the second part of it there also is that you're probably not going to have a premium call because he's got extra money sitting there from these unused portions from those maturities. And when you get that, then your APR is just stellar. So this is a great example of where things can go right. Now, we showed you the other side where, yeah, if you have some long-term, this is why you diversify, hence the name of the show, is you put it in. We have a lot of clients that have, like, let's say if they've got $50,000 or $100,000 to invest with their IRA, they might split it up into various different portfolios, right? You're working on a case right now like that, Barry, right? You and I we won't talk about the amount, but you have some portions in different rounds that you're mixing them because you believe in that too. I know that we work with other people who don't, is we want them to have as many policies as possible so that if they have some 5 or 7 percenters over here, they also get the home runs. Talk about that case just in general and what you did.
Yeah, absolutely. So our usual offering, like we've mentioned a few times here, is 5 policies, maybe 6 policies. What if you want more? What if you have a large investment and you don't want so few policies, right? If you have a $25,000 investment, by all means, take a 5 policy, take a 6 policy, no problem. If you have 100,000, 200,000, even more, you want that spread out as many ways as you can, right? That means you're going to get more like the median returns. We're not going to wind up a scenario where all these insureds live long, right? It's
to 100 to 150, right?
Yeah, I mean, it could happen that one person lives to 100, 110, right? It can happen.
No, I mean, I don't even want to bring that, Barry, because I've been in this business for almost 25 years. I've never seen one person live beyond 100. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I've never seen it once. Out of all the policies, I understand the theoretical angle. I've seen some people live into their mid 90s. I've seen one go to 95, 96, 98. I've never seen anybody. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and that's to my point. Sure, it's rare on one case. It's even rarer on 5 cases, but shoot, we can basically say it's not going to happen on 10, 15 cases, right? It's just not. And, we can't guarantee it for legal reasons. Our lawyer's going to give us looks. But we could basically say, in all likelihood, that that's not happening. And so, the larger the investment, the more I would like to see it spread out, especially if you have a maybe $40,000 investment. Definitely consider 2 portfolios, 2 sets of policies, so that you own 10 or 12 policies instead of just 5.
Agreed. No, that's the way to go. And even so, that I've always done, and you know that's because we worked together a long time, is I'll run into somebody and they want to dip their toe in the pool for 50 on their IRA. They got $1 million in IRA. And the idea is I'm 100% coming back to them the next year once they get their understanding. And it's like, okay, now they're ready for another 50. And so every year I can keep going back and doing 50s and 25s. And next thing you know, maybe after 4 or 5 years, they've got $200,000 in the product. But think about that. They've got $200,000 in 20 different policies, 20 different payout opportunities on 20 different timelines.
Yeah, that's
great.
Right.
I love that idea.
Yeah, that's right. I was just going through our investor list the other day. The most a single investor has, you wouldn't believe it. This guy has 10 sets of policies. He's bought an interest in, I think,
50
policies.
policies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, way to go.
Yeah, that's how you minimize your downside risk.
Right, because then he gets the 5s and 7s over here, but he's involved in every home run, right? He gets it. Okay, great. Well, that's going to be it for us. I mean, here, at the end of the year, folks, wanted to show you how this works. Look at what Barry did this year, made his clients over $5 million, ranging from 20% APR to then 13% APR to 10% APR. And then on that fourth case, yeah, okay, 5, 6, 7%. And you blend it all together and you see really good returns outside the market, uncorrelated to any kind of thing that's going on, government shutdowns, tariffs, whatever the issue is today that's creating chaos in the government. You don't care because your money is over here in life insurance policies on people who are elderly, who have health issues, and that ultimately are going to pass. And it's a non-correlated asset. So Barry, I appreciate it. Congratulations on the new baby again, right? And I'm sure we'll talk to you again in early 2026. When you get the new maturity, we'll sit down and look at that again and see what else you got going on. So I thank you so much for your time.
I love it, Ben. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Everybody, thank you for joining Truly Diversified. Of course, you can reach out to us by going to lifeassetllc.com, lifeassetllc.com. At the same time, you can also go to lifeadvisorsolution.com if you're an agent and would like to work with us. And Barry's company, of course, they are a California-only company, but we do have companies that work like his that offer the same idea. And you can reach his company at equilifellc.com. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you on the next time here on Truly Diversified.